I'm Dale Smith, aka Journo Dale, and we're here to talk about Canadian politics. And speaking of plugging the hole, we were going to shift gears and talk about the disability benefit because I know this has been a real bugaboo of yours. We both saw the minister in charge of this absolutely immolate her credibility on CBC the other day.
Yeah, that was quite the
To use a fairly polite term.
Yeah.
Um, and and just I guess in terms of I'm kind of a bit of a loss as to why the government thought this was acceptable, other than they gave themselves a deadline and had no hope of meeting it, and just threw this out the door in order to try and placate people. But
Yeah, or tax policy at finance drove this because we had heard,
mhm.
and again, this is not anything that's like, that I know for sure, but working with a lot of disability communities, we heard for several years that tax policy at finance was involved and was looking at a annual layout of 1 to 1.5 billion, and that's what we got.
Yeah.
And that it's just, I'm so frustrated with this. It's going to take me a little bit to sort of formulate the words here, because they strung the disability community along for several years on the hope, and if I may, if you look at the legislation, on a commitment to do much better than that. And I think this is something that we don't talk enough about, of governments exploiting the nonprofit community as well as individuals who really just don't. I mean, people with disabilities have to use a lot of time to manage their disability and their symptoms.
Yeah.
And then to engage in what was essentially 3 years of not listening and not respecting and not incorporating any of the things that they said is, I don't even know what the word is. It's way more than a slap in the face. It's like,
Oh, I think it's a betrayal.
It's a total betrayal, and just rude and disrespectful and all of these kinds of things of, you were the one who made the commitment, you government, Liberal Party, in your plot, you made the commitment. And then to have it end like this, you didn't need the community and all their time and all their expertise to land here.
Yeah.
I hope I'm expressing my rage enough.
I'm getting it.
And I know the minister is saying, this is the start and we can build off of this, and the provinces should have been doing things all along. Yes. And in fact, I just had some tweets at Sheila Malcolmson in BC, because they have a 540-page report that they paid almost $4 million for, to tell them what they can be doing on the provincial disability benefit. But again, it was the Liberal Party in an election platform that made the commitment for the Canadain Disability Benefit that had none of the words associated with it that the minister used in that appearance on PNP.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And let's point out, I live in a province that is most likely to claw back that $200 benefit that they are providing. And this feels like CERB all over again. If you remember when CERB was first rolled out, the government, the federal government, all they did was say, hey, provinces, please don't claw this back. And only 3 didn't, right? Every other province and territory clawed back income assistance when their beneficiaries qualified for CERB. And they qualified because the provinces have incentives for people on income assistance to work.
Yeah.
And so it's not like, again, there were provinces, including my own, that balanced the budget on the backs of people with disabilities. And I just can't, I don't know how to tell people how repugnant I find that. It's just so veiled in ableism to a degree that I just can't put it into words.
Yeah, and fully understandable. I guess just to round things off, I guess what kind of numbers were you looking at in terms of what this should have been in terms of, not the 6 billion over 6 years, but what a more reasonable expectation for what was promised to have been?
Yeah, I mean, again, if I may throw the PBO under the bus again.
Please do.
So the PBO has access to data that the disability community does not have access to. Yeah. So those of us in the grassroots that was trying to do some modeling, we're kludging together bits of information and instinct and understanding and things like that. And, given what I knew about the data that was available and the fiscal position of the government, because I'm an economist. Whether I like it or not, the budget constraint always sort of comes in some way, shape, or form. So while the best case would have been in that 30 billion range, I was on the side of 10 to 12 billion of being realistic, 30 billion being reasonable, 10 to 12 being realistic.
Is this per year or over?
Yeah, per year.
Okay.
Per year. Yeah, not over.
Okay, just needed to make that clear.
Yes, my apologies. And that was based on a broader definition of disability than the DTC. It was based on assessing eligibility on individual income, not household income. A disability benefit should never be based on household income. Yeah. And also factoring in how it would interact with provincial programs. So you can think of 30 billion of something that would supplant all provincial programs, whereas a 10 to 12 would be something designed to provide a floor across, and then disability assistance in each of the provinces and territories making up that difference. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and it's good just to get that context out there so that we know kind of what the disparity between what was promised and what was delivered.
There's a big disparity. Yeah. What is it? 1.4 billion a year.
Yeah.
Versus 12 billion a year versus 30 billion a year. I mean, we're not even in the same stratosphere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for taking the time to talk us through these things. I know they're very much in the discourse right now, and it's good to get some actual facts and figures around that.
Well, and I dare you to find somebody else that can talk about both capital gains and a disability benefit in one interview.
So thanks so much for doing this, and we'll talk again in the future.
Thanks, Dale. Appreciate it.
All right. And that's everything for this week. Join us again next week for some more Canadian politics. I'm Dale Smith. That's at journo_Dale on Twitter and journodale_no_ on Blue Sky. And don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.